Phil Blackman, President of Engineers and Architects of Hawaii. In this community outreach, we really want to encourage viewers to join our EAH meetings live. You can join us either in person or on Zoom. Visit eahawaii.org for how to attend. This month's Olelo program features Parker Kushima, who was with the AmeriCorps Vista program. AmeriCorps Vista program attracts 5,000 participants to serve annually to alleviate poverty by helping local organizations to expand capacity for change. The Hawaii State Energy Office and Hawaii's Climate Commission sponsored Parker Kushima's one-year mission. Parker talks about his work on mobility hubs on all Hawaii islands, and he explains how mobility hubs can reduce energy and provide better disaster resiliency in Hawaii. Parker's passion is working to invent the future, and he now works for the Hawaii State Energy Office as outreach and community engagement specialist and clean energy wayfinders coordinator.
My name's Kanan Sean. I'm with Hawaii Geophysical Services. We're gonna, start the meeting now. We are half hybrid and half in person, half on Zoom. Call on Maria to introduce our speaker.
Thank you. So I'm Maria Tome, and I'd like to welcome and introduce our speaker, Parker Kushima. He is an AmeriCorps Vista with our office. He graduated from Kamehameha schools and then went off to the mainland. You might have heard of it, Princeton, and got a degree in electrical engineering. And we are very fortunate that he's decided to join the AmeriCorps for a year of service with the Hawaii State Energy Office on transportation, affordability issues, and equity for folks who need to get around and may not have the types of income or available options that many of us take for granted. So I've asked him to share some of his thoughts with us today. Please welcome Parker Kushima.
Aloha kako. My name is Parker Kushima. Again, I'm a transportation affordability specialist with the Hawaii State Energy Office and the Climate Ready Hawaii Vista cohort, sponsored by the Hawaii Climate Commission. And thank you, Maria, for the introduction earlier. So I was introduced to hubs early in my Vista career, first through mobility hubs and then through resilience hubs, which got me interested in creative, community-driven designing of community spaces. So in this presentation, Hubs in Hawaii, Enhancing Mobility and Resilience for a Clean and Equitable Future, I'll cover the definition of hubs with a focus on mobility and resilience hubs and their intersection, the current hub work being done across the state, and my ideas for potential of hubs in Hawaii to support a clean, equitable, and resilient future. So first off, what is a hub? Hubs are centralized accessible locations that combine necessary amenities and services to best serve specific community needs. You can think of it as the hub and spoke design, where hubs provide a consolidation of resources and the capacity to reach out and connect with other hubs and the community at large. The first step in designing a hub is to listen to communities to understand what they have and what they need. Hubs should be community informed and context sensitive and uniquely designed for a community or location. They should also be trusted, safe, and welcoming community spaces that foster social interaction in addition to their primary functions. Hubs have the potential to tell fascinating stories about the places in which they're located while providing community benefits and advancing broader goals in climate, mobility, and equity. So touching on equity again, equity is really at the heart of hub design. Different people and different communities have different needs, so a one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work. Here in this image, you can see a good visualization of equity. In the top, equality would be everyone getting the same bike, whereas in the bottom, equity is everyone getting services or resources that suit their needs. So equity considers the history, policies, power structure, and culture of impacted communities. It's addressed through the ongoing process of responding to these existing dynamics by developing tools and resources that meet specific needs and uplift communities. So please keep equity in mind throughout this presentation because it's really going to be a thread that connects all of what I'm going to present on. So now that we know the general idea of what types of hubs are there out there, hubs come in a variety of styles which meet specific needs. A community space which sources ingredients from local farms and includes restaurants, grocery stores, community kitchens with public access, refrigeration and storage, and distribution capacity could be a food hub, while a site which consolidates the production, storage, and utilization of energy for community benefits could be an energy hub. My research has primarily focused on mobility and resilience hubs, but as we'll soon see, the lines between various hub types may not be as defined as we might think. So the first hub type that I'd like to explore deeper are mobility hubs, also known as multimodal mobility hubs. Mobility hubs are locations which provide convenient access to multiple transportation modes and related amenities to support safe multimodal travel. They can be integral pieces of the transportation system that connect people to the destinations and services that are necessary for daily life. Mobility hubs are often, but not always, built around established, reliable transit routes to allow for seamless transition between high-capacity public transportation and other transportation modes, and often go hand in hand with transit-oriented development or TOD strategies. They can include transportation services such as electric public transit, accessible pedestrian infrastructure, micromobility services such as bike parking and storage or bike or scooter share, electric vehicle parking and charging infrastructure, and car share or ride share services. They can also include a variety of passenger amenities such as safe waiting spaces, real-time wayfinding information, public Wi-Fi, transit-oriented retail, and affordable housing. A major benefit of mobility hubs is that they support clean, active, and multimodal transportation and make it easier and more convenient for people who may not have access to or are trying to transition away from single occupancy vehicles. This can lead to reductions in vehicle miles traveled or VMTs and associated greenhouse gas emissions while supporting equitable access to mobility. Mobility hubs also incorporate ideas from many programs which aim to enhance clean, equitable, and resilient transportation, including Complete Streets, Safe Routes to School, and Vision Zero. These programs address safety and climate concerns, two areas core to the function of mobility hubs. I've also had the pleasure of organizing presentations from mobility consulting firms Alta Planning and Design and Nelson Nygaard to my past year of Vista service to share their experience of and industry knowledge of mobility hubs across the nation. The Alta presentation is available on the Climate Ready Hawaii website, which I'll link after this. So please check out that presentation for further details about mobility hubs, including land use and siting considerations, implementation and policy strategies, and the role of mobility hubs in COVID recovery. The next hub type I'd like to explore are resilience hubs, also sometimes called community resilience hubs. The Urban Sustainability Directors Network, or USDN, defines resilience hubs as community serving facilities augmented to support residents and coordinate resource distribution and services before, during, or after a disruption. When designed well, resilience hubs can equitably enhance community resilience by improving local quality of life, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving access to public health services, reducing burdens on local emergency response teams, and fostering community cohesion. Resilience hubs are tailored to the specific needs of communities and are often built around established, trusted community spaces such as schools, public libraries, or community centers. They can include elements such as access to renewable energy, food, water, and resource distribution capacity, basic health and medical supplies and services, information and communication infrastructure, and logistical coordination capacity. An important thing to note is that resilience hubs are designed to serve communities before, during, and after disruptions, such as natural disasters or global pandemics. Resilience also often comes to light in times of disruption or recovery, but also plays an important role in everyday normal life. Resilience can strengthen communities by providing safe and accessible spaces for events and programs, and can help communities become more aware of and familiar with resilient elements such as resource distribution and access to information and communication to better prepare themselves for worst case scenarios. So what happens if we combine these two hub types? After discussing these two hub types, the similarities in their functions and benefits to communities may become more apparent. I like to elaborate on this connection by saying that mobility is an element of resilience and resilience is an element of mobility. While each of these hub types provides essential services and benefits themselves, the combination of the two opens the door for creative, cost and space efficient designs which can drastically shift the way we think about community infrastructure. The same goes for any other type of hub out there. Hubs, by definition, are places that combine various amenities and services to improve access and benefits. So it only makes sense that we should be looking for ways to more efficiently create community spaces which holistically serve all community needs. I've had the opportunity to meet with folks around the state working on either mobility hubs or resilience hubs, and it's become clear that the silos created by various government sectors or industries and insufficient collaboration between all of them can lead to oversights in hub designs. I think that getting hung up on the terminology may impede more innovative hub designs that meet wider needs. So broader terms like community hub and improved collaboration between sectors may allow creative and resource-packed design ideas, hubs that serve the general needs of communities. These may include access to multimodal mobility, housing, food, social services, healthcare, emergency services, employment, recreation, or energy, just to name a few. The goal of combining hub elements becomes more feasible when you introduce the idea of modularity. Components can be added through retrofits to enhance the existing functionality of a space and provide more comprehensive services that weren't included in the original scope of a project. For example, take an ordinary bus stop with no additional features, like this one on Hawaii Island. Now, adding a bike rack, improved visibility and accessibility of pedestrian crossing, and accessible updated wayfinding information, and you've created a small mobility hub. Adding in a solar panel to the roof with charging stations for devices, public Wi-Fi, and basic medical kits can further enhance the functionality of the location, creating a space that people want to be in and not just one that they need to be in. And really, the sky's the limit when factoring in modular elements, and creative design provides the opportunity to make efficient, low-cost adjustments to completely transform our community spaces. Another consideration for hub design is scale. A hub in dense urban environments with robust public transit and close proximity to a variety of locations, such as downtown Honolulu, will look very different from a hub in a more rural location like in Waimanalo. The scale of a hub will be entirely dependent on the geography, population, and existing infrastructure of an area, and listening to communities will provide the insight necessary to design an appropriately sized hub with the right amenities and services. Now I'd like to take some time to look at examples of proposed hub projects across the state. Many of these proposed projects and plans are mobility hubs, but as I discussed before, mobility is a component that enhances broader community services and amenities to create comprehensive and community spaces. Starting with the County of Kauai, the County of Kauai is currently pursuing 3 major potential mobility hub projects at the Lihue Civic Center, Maheiona Hospital, and the North Shore Resort areas. The conceptual Lihue Civic Center mobility plan is a core component of a larger redevelopment plan, which intends to solidify the Civic Center as a mixed-use civic and commercial anchor for Lihue town and the island as a whole. The proposed mobility plan will integrate mixed-use TOD development, a mobility hub, and a parking management strategy to create cohesive and robust transportation networks within Lihue town. The plan envisions a small mobility hub and transportation network which supports services such as transit, car and ride share, and micromobility options, and connects to related amenities such as affordable housing, commercial businesses, a child care facility, and the Civic Center itself. Future potential TOD development on nearby state properties are also being considered in the plan as modular additions. This project is a great example of the potential for mobility hubs and their extended networks to build off of existing trusted community spaces to revitalize an entire community and provide safe and accessible mobility options. I'm also glad to share that the Lihue Civic Center Mobility Plan has received TOD CIP planning funds to procure a contract with a consultant to further develop their plan. The Samuel Maheiona Memorial Hospital Conceptual Master Plan aims to evaluate potential services which will enhance the campus and surrounding community, considering adjacent state lands and community needs and desires. Potential services may include affordable housing, relocation of the HPHA senior housing, siting of a proposed county police station, preschool facilities, a potential public library, and an on-site mobility hub, which may include car share, pedestrian connections to existing on-street bus stops, micromobility sharing, and bike parking. These potential mobility amenities are intended to reduce on-site parking demand and encourage transit and multimodal transportation use. Centered around the hospital campus, this wide variety of services and amenities aims to create a continuum of care for seniors and behavioral health, and ideally create a campus that is the model for multi-generational, multi-use healthcare wellness facilities. The final Kauai example is a proposed shuttle service and mobility hub project, which aims to change the model of how visitors get around the island. The county is focused on reducing visitors' reliance on single occupancy vehicles by transitioning to shuttle services from the airport to resorts, local shuttles, micromobility options within resort areas, and short-term car rentals or car share at resorts instead of weekly car rentals. Mobility hubs at the airport and within resorts such as Poipu, Princeville, Hanalei, and the Coconut Coast could act as endpoints for these transit lines, integrating shuttle services, micromobility options, and improved bike and pedestrian infrastructure, and as well as the Kauai bus. These mobility amenities could also serve resort employees, reducing their need for single occupancy vehicles as well. And this example shows the opportunity for hubs to address a specific industry or population, namely in this case, the tourism industry and visitors, by identifying an existing area for improvement and developing cleaner and more equitable solutions. Now looking at the island of Oahu, the city and county of Honolulu's proposed mobility hub plan center around the rail and the bus as strong transit backbones to create a safe and convenient mobility hub network. While there's potential for mobility hub elements to be incorporated in many, if not most, of the rail stations and their surrounding neighborhoods, there are two major upcoming projects, the Kaila Transit Mobility Plaza and the Kalauao Bus Transit Center and Mobility Hub. The Kaila Transit Mobility Plaza will anchor the eastern end of the rail system at the future Ala Moana rail station and aims to create an iconic plaza which serves many people and purposes. This image shows one of the proposed designs from the alternatives analysis presented at a recent community meeting. The proposed designs prioritize efficient connection between the rail and bus system, bicycle infrastructure, passenger facilities including shelters, real-time information, wayfinding, fare machines, and retail, and safe, accessible, and convenient pedestrian corridors for individuals with disabilities and transit-dependent populations. The Kaila Mobility Plaza's location in Ala Moana Shopping Center and connection to the rail highlighted as a notable example of a large-scale urban mobility hub with the potential to drastically shift the mobility environment of the downtown Honolulu and Waikiki areas. So this project is currently undergoing an alternatives analysis comprised of community engagement and multimodal assessments to identify best design options based on data collection and community input, and is planned for construction in 2024 to 26. Next, the Kalauao Bus Transit Center and Mobility Hub is planned to serve the Pearl Ridge, Pearl City, and Aiea regions to improve multimodal transportation for the rail station and surrounding areas. And this image here shows a proposed design for the hub. So the function of this hub is similar to the Kaila Mobility Plaza, focusing on bus and rail connections with accessible bike and pedestrian infrastructure, including a connection to the widely used Pearl Harbor bike path. The planned inclusion of 4 electric bus charging stations also brings the city closer to its goal of 100% renewable powered bus fleet. The Kalauao Mobility Hub has completed its final environmental assessment with upcoming neighborhood board update meetings in the next few weeks and construction planned to begin in 2024. Next, we'll take a look at the Kaimuki Middle School Microgrid project. So Kaimuki Middle School is planning for a microgrid project, which enhances its capacity as a resilient disaster relief shelter. Kaimuki Middle currently has a photovoltaic or PV system connected to the grid, but this project intends to add a battery backup system and the ability for the PV system to operate independent of the grid for 8 to 12 hours, depending on conditions. Since schools are trusted community spaces, and Kaimuki Middle School is the designated shelter for the densely populated East Honolulu, the school and the surrounding communities can benefit greatly from the increased disaster preparedness and energy security offered by a microgrid. The project is planned to be funded through FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, or BRIC program, and is currently under consideration and pending approval. The school will also work with the Diamond Head Post-Disaster Energy Backup and Response Working Group, facilitated by the Kapi'olani Community College, or KCC. KCC houses a 1.74 megawatt grid-independent PV and battery storage system, in addition to a multitude of resilience hub elements, including food distribution capacity and emergency response training. Kaimuki Middle School and KCC along with nearby state emergency response facilities, can create a strong network of resilience in East Honolulu and serve as a great example of coordination to best serve a community. And finally, for Oahu, we'll look at the Kalauao Community Resilience Hub. So the Kalauao region of Oahu is a notable focus area for resilient infrastructure. A single main road provides access to much of the North Shore, leaving it vulnerable to coastal hazards and lack of access in disaster scenarios. Huio Hau'ula has acquired land to build a resilience hub with the Shade Group and other partners, which will serve the Ko'olauloa region not only as a disaster relief center, but also as a community gathering space. The site plans to include access to critical resources such as water, electricity, food, and medical services, and is modeled in the context of an Ahupua'a system and Hawaiian culture, with different functions carried out across the hub. The lower area here indicates and includes native agriculture and medicinal plant zones, while streams and native forests expand back into the mountain. This design not only provides resilient capacity, but will also allow for native Hawaiian culture and practice learning opportunities to holistically serve the resilience and cultural needs of the Ko'olauloa community. Now moving on to Maui County. Maui MPO's Hele Mai Maui Long-Range Transportation Plan for 2040 identifies mobility hubs as a priority transit improvement to improve efforts along the major TOD corridor and make getting around Maui more convenient and comfortable. The Kahului Transit Hub is being developed along the TOD corridor near important destinations including the Kahului Public Library, Queen Ka'ahumanu Center, Kahului Shopping Center, schools, and the future housing. This location will serve as a key connection point for many transit routes with safe and accessible bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Kahului is one of Maui's major employment centers, houses a major airport, has a high density of bike and pedestrian crashes and fatal car crashes, and has been identified as a critical equity focus for the islands with populations who have higher reliance on non-auto forms of transportation. These considerations, along with identified widespread community interest in more sidewalks and bike lanes, more reliable bus service, and less traffic, establishes the importance of the Kahului Transit Hub as an integral piece of Maui's transportation network. Construction on this hub is in progress, but is currently delayed due to COVID-related supply chain issues. And finally, taking a look at Hawaii Island. The County of Hawaii's Heleon Transit and Multimodal Transportation Plan identifies many potential hub locations, built primarily around existing and planned bus routes. Due to Hawaii Island's size, transit is an important and necessary service to connect people to their destinations. The plan notes the creation of transportation hubs and bus stops with amenities that provide rider comfort and safety, and that help support community and village gathering places as one of 5 major goals to support the plan's overall vision. A hub in Pahoa is identified as a top priority for implementation. The Pahoa hub would include transportation services such as bus transit, bike share, bike parking, and other micromobility options, and passenger amenities such as shelter, lighting, electronic signage, fare machines, and restrooms. This hub also aligns with increased bus service and new flex routes for lower density corridors to support multimodal travel across the island. And these routes will connect to the hub when it's completed. And I'm also glad to share that the Pahoa hub has also received TOD CIP planning funds and is currently in the final selection process to recommend a site for purchase before beginning the design phase. And this project is planned to be completed in the next 2 to 3 years. Many other hubs are also recommended for Hawaii Island in locations such as Kona, Kea'au, and Hilo, and all bus stations across the island are under consideration for incorporating additional hub elements to increase connectivity and safety. So now that I've covered upcoming hubs across the state, I'd like to conclude by briefly discussing some of my ideas for potential hubs in Hawaii. The first idea here on the left is for all existing and upcoming hubs to inherently include mobility and resilience elements, as well as elements from other hub types that are out there. As I covered earlier, these elements can be thought of and implemented as modular additions to hub designs to comprehensively meet a wider variety of community needs. And if all hubs in Hawaii were designed with an open mind and the goal of feasibly addressing as many community needs as possible, we can only imagine the extent of community benefits. And then another idea that I have, and one that I believe is especially important for Hawaii, is to incorporate a strong sense of place within hubs. I mentioned earlier that hubs have the potential to tell fascinating stories about the places in which they're located. And as we all know, every place in Hawaii has a story to tell. This is a huge opportunity for communities to be heavily involved in the design of hubs. The level of richness and history gained by speaking with kupuna and the people who call a place their home can't be matched by any quantitative data out there. This could be implemented by bringing in local artists and designers to help design the aesthetics of the hub and incorporate stories in visually and culturally interesting ways. With all of that, hubs have a huge potential to shift the ways in which we view and design community spaces here in Hawaii. And by incorporating best practices from around the world, community knowledge and understanding, and various hub types, we can help to create a clean, equitable, and resilient home for all. Finally, I'd just like to give some quick acknowledgements to the folks who have helped make this presentation possible. First, to the Hawaii State Energy Office and the Hawaii Climate Commission for hosting me in my VISTA year, the Hawaii Interagency Council for Transit-Oriented Development, who has helped a lot in the development and compiling of Mobility Hub information. The 4 counties across Hawaii, the County of Kauai, City and County of Honolulu, County of Maui, and the County of Hawaii, for including their information and insight on the various hubs going on across the islands. Also, Planning and Design, Nelson Nygaard, and the USCN for information regarding mobility and resilience hubs. The Hau'ula Community Association, or Huio Hau'ula, Kaimuki Middle School, and KCC for their information about their resilience hubs, and the Maui MPO for information about the Maui Mobility Hub. So with all that said, mahalo to you all for listening, and I'm hoping that this presentation helps you learn more about the potential of hubs in Hawaii and the current work going on. So thank you.
You mentioned learning from other cities. I was in Hong Kong maybe 13, 14 years ago, which by your standards is the upper Paleolithic. And what you could do is go to a convenience store, buy a transportation card, hop on a bus, you wave your card around at the driver and beep, you're on the bus, get off at a ferry station. Hong Kong has lots of ferries. Beep, you're on the ferry, get off at a train station, wave the card around, beep, you're on a train. And when the card began to run low, you'd get a beep, beep, as you go into the convenience store again and refill it. What I didn't hear you mention in your presentation is any similar way of financing public transportation.
Yeah, definitely, Howard. There's just going back to your example from Hong Kong. There are definitely many examples, especially in Asia and Europe, of amazingly robust transportation systems that do support a lot of the elements of mobility hubs and should be used as best practices when we're implementing them across the state. In terms of financing these types of hubs, mobility and resilience hubs, a lot of the work that I've been doing has been identifying opportunities for financing and funding active and multimodal transportation projects across the state, mainly by raising awareness of what those projects are and the grants that connect to them in our Grants to Projects Bridge, which I've presented to the HSCO. But a lot of opportunities, I think, lie in combining the various hub elements to create much more robust projects that serve many needs, so that different types of hubs aren't, like, we shouldn't be in the situation where we are having to choose between like funding a resilience hub or funding a mobility hub. I think that the key to unlock that is to really get creative with the design of it, and then consolidate projects so that when funding does become available, it's a much more seamless process to fund a single project or a set of projects that meets a wider variety of needs. So it's not exactly the solution to the funding or the mechanisms to get started, but it's an idea for how to help facilitate that process.
Thank you, Parker. And what about the idea of, as I described, being able to go into a convenience store and buying a transportation card and having it available for all available transportation modes?
Yeah, so So on Oahu, we have the Holo card, which is currently for the bus, but planned for implementation with the rail system. And obviously not anything definitive here, but there have been talks about municipalizing services like Biki and bike share services, because any ways in which you can, make multimodal transportation and transitioning between modes more convenient and easier for everyday people. Any steps that we can take to help facilitate that process will help to support utilization of multimodal transportation and supporting both equity and climate goals. So Oahu is, there's a lot of potential for that since we do have the Holo card, but I've heard talks from Hawaii County about wanting to pursue a similar idea. And I think there's a lot of potential there, especially considering that the idea of hubs is to consolidate resources and amenities and services. So a system like that helps to tie all of that together seems like a natural progression.
Thank you, Parker. And at risk of dominating this whole thing, I'm sure all the rest of this vast audience is just brimming with questions and comments. But one final one, as recently as 300 years ago, the huge majority of our ancestors were utterly, totally, completely illiterate. And you mentioned stories twice as you're going around the community, deciding where to place a hub. You want to get stories. And then when you place the hub, you want to incorporate stories in order to enhance the sense of place there. So congratulations on that one. Now I'll turn it over to your vast and brimming audience here.
Thank you, Howard.
Go ahead, Phil.
If you were to make an overlay on some of these hub locations and of the distribution of the households, the household income, and where the people are working, how much are linked through that hub to full-time employment and a happy life there, or how much is it for another nice place to visit that folks from other places are trying to take advantage of that? I'm thinking in the Maui, the Whalers Village, for example. It isn't a direct, it's a nice hub. It has a lot of nice features, but it's not, if you did an overlay of the homes directly gaining an economic advantage, I don't think you would see that. So I'm just curious on these various locations, which one are self-sustaining instead of in making a community that's an economically viable point.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. I think that's a great consideration. Something that I've come across, a term called transit-oriented gentrification, is really a big concern when you're designing places that really, revitalize a community. You need to think about, who are you building this space for? And while the idea and kind of the philosophy of hubs is to, listen to communities and hear exactly what they need and build something designed to meet those needs, there's definitely opportunities for that to, get out of hand and either push communities out or, not necessarily achieve the goal that you wanted with the hub. And I think there's a really important nuance there that I probably don't have the perfect answer for, but definitely the start of that process is to, engage heavily with communities and make sure that you're creating something that is for them and not for, not for either. I mean, it's also for people like visiting the area and transiting through, but the first and foremost priority is that it's a space, a hub that is there for the community and meets the specific needs of them. So I don't have the golden bullet to avoid that issue, but it should definitely be like the first priority when designing the hub in the first place.
Parker, I was one of the founding members of the Hawaii Interagency TOD Council, and so I sat in those meetings for 4 years, I think, and until I got turned out. My biggest complaint with Honolulu is they focused on the rail. I mean, I think we need to have these types of modes all over Oahu. You know,
Mhm.
I've got a house in Kaimuki, and I keep telling Harrison that Kaimuki's a TOD area. It's got 17 buses that drive by, and you know all the and Haleiwa and you know, just like you know the other islands went beyond their central business area. You
Mhm.
know, I think you know, is there any plans to do that and really, you know, so we can connect more of Honolulu, you know, because we need this out on the North Shore. We need this to help connect, you know, Waimanalo with Kailua and, you know, vice versa, you know, and, you know, it's got to be more about, you know, because when I first moved to Oahu, we could do Circle Island, but you have to get in your car. We should be able to do Circle Island without getting in a car.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Bill, for bringing that up. It's yeah, as far as I'm aware, most of the mobility hub projects and kind of mobility efforts, especially from the city, are centered around the rail, as you said, and for reasons like I was saying, mobility hubs are often built around kind of that strong transit backbone. But I think what really brings it into the picture is thinking of mobility hubs not as kind of centralized locations, but as a network. While major mobility hubs would be placed along the rail line, there should definitely be opportunities for, you know, smaller scale mobility hubs that kind of connect to the network through the bus as another important transit backbone. And another way to, I think, to address that problem is to, again, think about the connection of mobility and resilience hubs, because a lot of these locations, you know, out on the North Shore, out on the east side, the west side, everywhere outside of downtown Honolulu, they're coming up with plans for community resilience hubs like the one in Hauula, and being able to tie in the mobility aspects to that, I think, is where there's a big opportunity to fill in those gaps, because you know, while the major ones are hubs or mobility hubs are being planned along the rail, you definitely need to think about how the entire system works together and not, you know, completely rely on just that one line that services, you know, just the urban areas of Hawaii, of Oahu. And same thing goes for the other islands. So I think there's actually a lot of opportunity to learn about mobility hub networks from the work that the other islands are doing, because they're not focusing so much on, you know, the rail, when they don't have the rail. So yeah, it's a great consideration. Thank you.
So the name hub implies a centralizing effect on the people in the area. And it seems like adjacent landowners that stand to benefit from the increased traffic and convenience and services maybe should pay proportionately more to receive that benefit. It sounds like the primary funding of these is grants based on just general tax collection. Can you speak to the potential for like adjacent landowners paying more for these things?
I personally I haven't looked too much into that funding source, but I think it's, you know, an interesting idea. I think, especially considering that, you know, especially larger scale hubs can be built with services such as like transit oriented retail and things like that. It's kind of interesting because it's I think there's a lot of tension between that and the idea we were talking about earlier about this like transit oriented gentrification. So I could imagine that that funding process could be sticky in some situations. But you know, I think it's a great idea. I can't really speak to the exact mechanics of it, but could be a potential for funding these and getting them out there. Yeah, but an interesting idea for sure.
Well, thank you.
Well, I would say that among all the other value gained today, relating hub to the hub of a wheel, I had never thought of before. And so now I know some places like our airline hubs, and those ways to get to the airline hub is through the spokes. So anyway, thanks for letting me visualize hub better than I had.
I was gonna ask a question, Parker. I like the idea of putting solar panels on at bus stops and whatnot, but I'm a little bit concerned that these places probably might get invaded by the homeless people. Now, it's always nice to have these amenities, but then you have to maintain them. Maybe that sounds like a negative comment, but I really like the idea of providing that service.
Yeah, definitely. I know I was just watching a presentation the other day as part of the Hawaii Book and Music Festival, and the homeless problem came up too in that the discussion of increasing public mobility services. And I guess I'd obviously it's a large issue, but I think their conclusion to it, or their proposal for it was not to have the homeless issue like deter from public transportation amenity benefits, but to include the like address the homelessness issue like as a part of the transportation enhancement as well. Like the two would kind of go hand in hand, because you don't want to avoid creating like safe and welcoming places for everyone because of homelessness or homeless folks. So it's definitely a hard thing to tackle, but I think the two issues definitely go hand in hand. I'm not sure if obviously it's a huge issue to tackle, so I'm not sure exactly how they would go about doing it. But I would say that it would be the wrong idea to let that deter us from making those kinds of investments and improvements. But yeah, it's tough.
I would add one more thing I learned was that I hadn't really seen the spelling that well, but we always call it haula, but it's haula. It's red hau tree, based on my Hawaiian book. Just never too old to learn.
I'm glad you're really getting the most out of my presentation, Martin, so thank you.
During the initial stages of rail, there was a environmental impact study done. I think it was $10 million, and about $500,000 went to try to get a model based on actual trips and destinations and hours of need for our bus system with its 4,000 stops here on Oahu. There was a lot of resistance to even collecting the data. Bus drivers wondering if they were running empty buses, would that impact their job? And so other reasons for people not wanting that kind of detail. But will we have a automated feedback system indicating the elements of these hubs that are gaining sustainable use versus those that are expenses that aren't getting sustainable use? And how are you addressing both in terms of contracts with the drivers and the suppliers and the customers?
I think an important part for not only these hub projects, but all projects in general is the evaluation of them. So I definitely think, some kind of either part manual or part automatic response for them would be really beneficial. In terms of, the response to that, I guess I could imagine, I don't have obviously the exact date on it, but I could imagine, I can imagine there being some pushback similar to that of the rail. And I think a way to alleviate that is to really, lead with the community benefits first, and then I kind of using that as my panacea to a lot of these issues. But but being able to really elaborate on that hopefully would help. In terms of the mechanisms of it and how it works with both the drivers and the customers. I guess obviously in the process of creating these hubs, a lot of state and government departments and offices would need, it's a really cross-departmental issue. So a lot of them would need much more expansive and robust community engagement programs in the first place, which is something that we're working on in the energy office. But hopefully through those processes, that'll provide a platform for gathering that kind of information. Whether or not it's well received or whether there's pushback to it, I guess I can't say at the moment. But definitely, like the evaluation and reviewing of the hubs should be like one of the top priorities after their implementation, because if the purpose of these hubs is be serving like community needs, like identified community needs, and they're not doing that, or they're doing it inefficiently or inequitably, then I think that either that's a failure in the design of it or the implementation of it itself. So ideally, I guess all of those processes would kind of be baked into both the the front end, the design of it, and also the evaluation after. Don't have the exact answers, but that's what I got.
I know in my travels in Europe, there were times you get onto a vehicle or transportation, train or bus with a ticket, and the bus knew when you got off. And so now you had very fine-grained information on what was the capacity of the bus, what was its load factor at every element as it's traveling. And I'm wondering, because we're starting this new program of a single ticket that gets you around, it probably is never too early to go ahead and make the collection of that kind of data and practice it now on our bus system at a time when we are very generous, even when they're running empty, to accept that they're using fuel and running up and down. And literally between 7 and 8, I stood out and watched bus after bus with no more than one person in it, applying the streets and the routes of Waikiki and Honolulu. It seems to be, if we can't be respectful enough of how resources are managed at this level, when we're all in the same, let's make sure we know what we're doing. In my experience of how vehemently the study that was done justifying rail, that fine-grained information was literally withheld from the city council for a period of months until after major decisions on spending and commitments were made. And just as you're saying, from how I just interpreted yours, is let's build it and then let's get the statistics. And I'm saying you have an excellent mechanism of doing the modeling mechanics on a major system with 4,000 stops and major transit purposes, all well documented, but we don't have the collection system of the data.
Yeah, I think things like the Holo card and bringing it like integrating different transportation modes into that could be a great opportunity for gathering that data. Whether or not it's shared or barred, that's another issue in and of itself. But yeah, for sure, you're right. I think leading, taking some kind of both data-driven and community-driven approach in the design and evaluation, the sweet spot is somewhere in there, and hopefully, would require a lot of collaboration between a lot of different parties.
So Parker, congratulations, you've got this certificate here. Where's the room? There we go. Maybe I'll just aim it at here. I'll put it on Aaron's phone instead. Sorry, thanks. So we will get this to you, certificate of appreciation presented to Parker Kushima in recognition of your presentation on mobility hubs. Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
Engineers and architects of Hawaii welcome your comments on this program and any of our recent programs. We encourage your direct participation in this community outreach. So please email us your comments and ideas at eahawaii@gmail.com.